Hello, my name is Margaret Abramsky. Welcome to my channel. As a seasoned art quilter, artist, and retired art teacher, I'm happy to share with you some ideas to enhance your creative practice.
The principles of design. These concepts are used by artists in all disciplines to help understand composition, to make good visual choices, and to help when you have something in your composition that is just not working. There are 7 principles of design: balance, movement and emphasis, unity, contrast, rhythm, and pattern. They are the ABCs, or the math facts, in visual art. The principles of design organize the elements of art. And of course, most of us are familiar with the elements of art. We understand line and shape and color and texture and value. Space is the illusion of depth. It's used often in landscapes. And form. Form is when these principles are applied to a 3-dimensional object. Balance. Balance is using the elements, arranging them in such a way that the work feels stable. The composition feels just right. There are 3 kinds of balance. There's symmetrical balance, which is even on both sides, like a face. There's radial balance, where it's equal coming from a central point all the way around. Think of this like a mandala. But asymmetrical balance is used most often in fine art. An example here of asymmetrical balance has this little boy sitting in the sand. We notice that one quadrant, the upper left, is almost empty. The lower right quadrant is almost filled with the figure. The upper right quadrant has the face, and the lower left quadrant just has a little bit of the body. So none of these quadrants are equal, and yet the composition, the photo looks stable and pleasing. Movement and emphasis work together. Movement creates a visual pathway that leads a viewer's eye through the composition to the center of interest. Emphasis is the focal point. It is that center of interest. It's where you want the viewer's attention to land on. So in this composition, you can see that there are 2 visual pathways. One of them below, which is actually looking almost like an actual pathway. It's actually a water conduit, but it's leading right to the figure. Above the figure, where the other arrow is, you can see that there's a pathway both of light, of the water, it's gushing out, and even the branch. All of these things are leading to where we want the viewer to look at, the figure. Unity is similar elements that work together to create a sense of visual cohesiveness. Unity is usually defined as pleasing or accessible, in some ways calming. So for example, unity might be using colors which are all cool, or maybe shades of blue. Or in this case, we see a repetition of the square in this yo-yo quilt. The square not only repeats, but the actual units that make up the square are repeated. And so it gives that sense of unity. Despite the fact that the colors are a little bit all over the place, it still looks cohesive. Contrast. Contrast is when you're using differences, a variety of shapes or colors or textures to create visual interest. So unity, you want to create a visual calmness, a cohesiveness. Contrast is the opposite. It's where you want to create some excitement. So looking at this set of paint lids, if they were all the same color blue, it would not be exciting. It would be unity, it would be cohesive, but it wouldn't have any interest. So in this case, just that simple addition of the yellow lid, the yellow being a warm color and the blue being a cool color, you get a picture that is much more interesting than if everything had been the same. Visual rhythm and pattern are somewhat the same thing, with a key difference. Pattern has an underlying structure that organizes the surface of a composition in a very predictable way. So in other words, you will know it's going to be yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow, green, or it will be square, 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 square. It's predictable. It has a structure. Rhythm also uses repeated elements. But the difference is that it's not predictable structure. Rather, it creates a tempo, a beat that may go fast and then slow down. It may be loud and then it's quiet. So rhythm and pattern are similar, but they're not the same. So here are the principles of design. These are concepts that artists in many disciplines use to organize a composition. They're a way of evaluating. They're a way of designing. They're a way of solving problems. They're extremely helpful, whether you draw or paint or, like me, make art quilts. There are 7 principles. The first, or the one I always start with, is balance. It's how are you going to create visual weight around your composition? Is it going to be symmetrical? Is it going to be radial? Is it going to be asymmetrical? Is it going to be, above all, pleasing and give one a sense of order? Contrast. How are you going to add a little excitement in your composition? Are you going to have things that are different, that kind of work off of each other? Things that are large, small, shapes that are organic and geometric, colors that are in contrast with each other? Or are you going to have some places where there's unity, where things are cohesive and calm and work together? Like maybe the same color that just changes in values. Movement and emphasis are that visual pathway, that's movement, and emphasis is the point of interest. It's where you want your viewer's eye to land. And finally, we've got pattern and rhythm, which are different. Patterns are structured. They're predictable. Rhythm, although it repeats elements, just like a pattern does, it's less predictable. It ebbs and flows. So think about these next time you're working on your project, or you're trying to figure out if your project is working or needs some help, or if you're evaluating it at the end. I hope this has helped you.